we'd like to introduce the chairman of today's session, Mr. Enrique Gallar. Mr. Gallar is currently Chief Product Officer at Chord, a startup aiming to reduce carbon emissions and GHG on maritime industry. He is also advisor to several startups in Europe, leveraging IoT data and machine learning applied to consumer products, mobility service providers, and energy. Previously, Mr. Gallar was Director of Design for Smart Cities, IoT, and Automotive at HERE. Based in Berlin, Germany, HERE Technology is a global location data and service provider specialized in automotive navigation, geospatial data services for B2C and B2B, and also public transportation offices offering intelligent transportation systems. Mr. Gallar led product innovation and development programs at Nokia with notable launch of Ashar product line, which sold 230 million units worldwide, and launch of location-aware mobile payments in emerging markets. Previously at Nokia, Mr. Gallar had several roles in strategy, product management, and business development, and led strategic partnerships with Sun Microsystems, IBM, and Motorola, as also M&A activities for mobile service platforms. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Gallar, please.
Thank you very much. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and afternoon to you all, wherever you are. Once again, a very warm welcome to the Singapore Maritime Week 2022 Maritime Software Developers Live TV, brought to you by the Maritime Port Authority of Singapore. It's very exciting to have the first ever virtual Maritime Software Developers Live TV part of Maritech conference and exhibition, running with a wonderful start of the opening ceremony. The Marine Tech Conference features global leaders of the industry and influencers who will speak on trending and important technology topics concerning maritime, ports, and adjacent industries. As a leading global maritime innovation and technology hub, Singapore will share use cases and lead discussions with other thought leaders on maritime and port technology. This year's theme, Transformation for Growth, aims to enable 2.5 days of dialogues and industry-by-industry experts who will be cutting through the clutter and taking a stand on maritime software development, supply chain digitalization, innovations, and emerging technologies that are shaping the future of ports and ships, and how startups, VCs are catalyzing transformation and fueling investments. This theme that brings us together today is truly important. The increasing demands of the decarbonization efforts, global uncertainties arising by the energy crisis, cost competitiveness of industry participants as a consequence of the increasing pressure on global demand supply chains. We are part of this catalytic change, bringing software, new platforms, and innovative solutions to maritime industry. And that will require the best of our talent and creative joint efforts to assist this transformation, which we are all embarked in. Let's put that effort and collective focus to work. These sessions today are a great rallying point for all of us joining together on our shared goals and objectives to achieve that growth. And before we commence the proceedings, please allow me to make some administrative announcements. There will be Q&A, trivia, and quizzes throughout the entire conference, so feel free to take part like you did earlier. So you have any questions for any speakers, please submit through the Pigeonhole link by clicking in the individual panel discussion sessions. Please make sure to use the swap card where you can arrange for meetings, take part on quizzes and trivia contests, visit the virtual exhibition booths, and engage other participants virtually. Do make the most of this time. Tomorrow, Marine Tech Conference will be in person at MBS, and exciting keynote addresses and sessions are planned. Visiting Marine Tech exhibition is free for all. Please visit the experience latest technologies and listen to the show floor tech talks delivered by the experts. Without further ado, may I now invite Anders Bryhni, Vice President, Head of Digital Ocean Applications, Kongsberg Digital, to deliver the speech on maritime software development landscape and trends. Anders, please.
Welcome to this talk on maritime software development, about what the market looks like, trends in the market, why the maritime market is a super interesting place to work, and how digitalization can really solve some of our biggest problems. My name is Bryhni. I work in Kongsberg Digital, where I'm heading the digital ocean applications efforts. I work out of Oslo in Norway. But we work with clients and partners across the globe, so we really feel that we are touching on a lot of the cool stuff that is happening in the market. So I'll share a presentation with you today, and I hope that you will find it to be interesting. First of all, let me start by sort of painting the big picture, a little bit of a backdrop here. We talk about the blue economy. It's really all value creating activities that happens on the water, on the oceans, in the oceans, on waterways. And we roughly split the market into two parts. First of all, we have what we call maritime transportation, focusing on moving stuff from point A to point B. We want to do that, of course, in a very efficient manner. We want it to be predictable and reliable. Everyone wants their sneakers to come at the right time. And we want to do this with, of course, the lowest possible emissions and cost. And this is very much machinery that focus on keeping things going, keeping regularity, avoiding downtime, and just getting sort of things flowing as they should. The other part is we call Maritime Operations. It's really focusing on activities that are on the oceans or in the water and not really about transporting things. So typical thing is fisheries, right? We have a lot of oceans. We have a lot of people that need food. So utilizing the resources in the ocean, key part of maritime operations for feeding humanity. At the same time, we have the energy space. The traditional oil and gas players, of course, still very relevant. At the same time, we see renewables coming up as a big thing also on water, either through offshore wind or through tidal waves and so on. So it's a lot of stuff happening there. At the same time, we have recreation, right? The cruise lines are coming back after a few tough years of COVID, with their own requirements to things being both sustainable, of course, and good for the local ecosystems. But at the same time, it needs to be quiet, right? It needs to create a good atmosphere for the customers. And a final topic that, of course, or that I believe is going to be quite big in the years to come is mining, offshore mining. The green transition requires a lot of new minerals, and a lot of those minerals exist in the ocean. So it's important to find good and new ways to harvest those resources. So let me talk about, we're mainly going to talk about the maritime transportation side today. I've seen that about 90% of transportation in the world today is happening by sea. It's a very sustainable transport mode. It's also quite cost efficient. And we see, based on the expected growth of sort of the need to demand side of moving stuff around, we expect it to triple until 2050. There are some challenges. It's a pretty traditional business. Well, we'll come back to that. It's a little bit complex. It's slow moving. It's fragmented. It has a lot of players that are really seeing a tough competition, and from that seeing low margins. So it's challenging to invest in new things. It's pretty asset heavy, with a lot of things having very long lifetimes. So that leads to a market where making changes is actually not that simple. And then we have some sort of trends coming up now that I'll spend some time on in the coming slides. And first and foremost, I already touched on sustainability, and I mentioned that we expect the tripling of the transportation need. That of course leads to not very good development in the total emissions from the shipping sector, and leading from that, we have a lot of initiatives on reducing the carbon intensity, reducing the emissions from our transport operations. So the trajectory you see on the top out here on the right-hand side, it shows the expected growth in emissions if sort of we do business as usual, right? So of course we don't want to go there. So it's a lot of different scenarios that are being put into the models, and we see based on those models there are activities sort of being initiated, right, to either run ships more optimally from a weather point of view, maybe moving stuff going slower, like slow steaming that's been around for a while. It's a lot of things that you could do to reduce the emissions of your transportation. And we also see that, as I mentioned, shipping is maybe a little bit slow to the game in some ways, but it has gone through a lot of the same steps as other industries, all the way back from the Industrial Revolution. So it's been through steam engines, it's been through the mass production aspects. We have had containerization that is somewhat similar to the assembly lines of the other industries. And then over the last few years, we moved into digitalization. And now there are a lot of question marks on how to move forward, but we're pretty certain that it somehow will involve a lower carbon future. So either that goes for fuels, it goes for how we build the ships, how we run them, so on. It's certainly going to be a huge set of changes coming up. And then on the Maritime Trend side, so sort of how is this affecting us? We already talked a little bit about the environmental side. We believe that is going to be even bigger. The fuel transition makes it a little bit difficult for ship owners to know exactly where to invest their dollars when it comes to new propulsion systems. Of course, one thing is to put in there a new super fancy LNG or hydrogen fueled engine, but the problem is that, of course, you need an infrastructure to make sure the fuel is available where you're taking the ship. So it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg kind of problem for a lot of these fuels. So it's a complex and difficult to understand market. And then at the same time, as we mentioned, digitalization, certainly a big thing with more sort of decision support systems, monitoring and so on. And at the same time, remote and autonomous, which is a bigger topic. I'll come back to that. But it's a lot of opportunities coming with these new technologies, right? We all have electric cars that have autopilot systems. We're used to a very digital world in our everyday lives, and exactly seeing how this hits the shipping market is not always so easy to get a grip on. I mentioned that there are a lot of different players in the economy, right? So very often we talk about the vessel owners, we talk about the ones owning the ships, right? And yeah, they're very important, of course, but they are just one cog, right, in this big machinery. So there are a lot of other cogs that also needs to sort of move in the same speed or move in the same way to make the whole shipping market work in a good way. And I think you'll see that both as software developers, as technology enthusiasts, it's a lot of really interesting developments in all of these areas. And I'll try now to go through some examples just to show exactly sort of how software and digital affects the different kinds of players in this picture. But first, before I jump into that, this is a picture that we're making this annually, just tracking the kinds of software providers that are in the market. So these serve the various actors that I had in the previous picture, right? With supporting everything from very administrative tasks into very operational stuff related to the vessels, and more into sort of how to manage and optimize entire fleets. So it's a very broad picture. It's somewhat confusing, I guess, for some of the players that are going out there and needing and wanting new tools. But at the same time, it's very interesting because it's a race with a lot of horses, right? So there are so many places you can join to make a difference, and it's so many, would you say, bets into finding new and cool areas of value creation. So I'm really positive and intrigued by this picture because I just see it as an ocean of possibilities. And of course, some of these players are what you would call startups. Once again, I think perhaps that the maritime market has been a little bit slower to the party than some other markets, but now it's certainly a lot of these startups popping up. And at least I look at the Startup Wharf page as sort of one source of information, where you see that it's quite a lot, right? It's a lot of startups covering different parts of the market. And one thing is that the total number of companies is growing quite significantly, but also the investments, right? So it's becoming a lot of capital available, and that makes it easier to really just to generate these things, right? It's always a fight for startups to be able to fund their growth phase. So I think more and more we'll see cool startups coming out in the maritime space. But you also have the bigger players, right? Amazon, not really a startup anymore, pretty big company. I think we all bought something from them at one point or another. An interesting move, right, is for a company like Amazon, who sees in their sort of worldview, their reality, the ability to ship something from across the oceans is pretty crucial, right? And traditionally, they've just used sort of freight companies to handle all their logistics, but more and more we see that they show an interest into more of the internals of the shipping market, and it seems that they will want to take a bigger stake in this market. And I think through the sort of the container crisis that has been over the last months and years, more and more players are going to think in this way. So I expect there to be some dynamics in this space, and that some of the big players like Amazon are going to take bigger positions into the shipping market. Exactly how that is going to look is hard to say, but there are certainly possibilities in that space. I think all of us also have some relation to the class societies. They have been really instrumental in getting the shipping industry to where it is today, and they will be in the future. We work closely with more of them. Example here is from DNV. We have a very, I would say, good relationship to the class societies, and we think it's really interesting, right? Because traditionally, a lot of people, auditors, have been sent on board vessels, still will be, but it's also a pretty expensive sensor platform, right? So a lot of the measurements that have been done by auditors, they can be done by instruments, and I think we'll see more and more, say, automatic condition monitoring, to put it that way, entering the class certification processes. So personally, I think this is one of the areas where things will dramatically change over the last 5 to 10 years. So really eager to see where things are moving. We have a huge set of partners that we work with in Kongsberg, and it's just a huge set of software vendors, right? I showed you this complete list before. And I think what's really interesting now is to see how pure software companies can scale very fast across big fleets, just because digital technology is maturing, right? So it's becoming more and more easy for software vendors to find infrastructure providers that provide access to sensors and to the vessels, and by doing that, they can scale their functionality pretty broadly. And then a few words on remote and autonomous. Will we see that all the ocean-going vessels will be autonomous in the next few years? I don't think so. Somewhat similar to on the roads, right? Even if a lot of cars have autopilot functions, you don't really see a bunch of them driving around on their own. And I think for the shipping market, it's really important to understand what kind of value can we get from autonomous shipping. So I think it's in some use cases, like it's shown on the left here, avoiding collisions, making smart decisions in very constricted waters or in sort of challenging spaces. I think that's interesting for autonomy functions. And for specific use cases, right? Either relatively short distance travel, where repeated voyages. You might have ferries, right? That could be electrified and autonomous. So there are some specific use cases where autonomy probably sooner or earlier are going to make a difference than in others. But what we really believe is going to be big, right, is this remote operation centers, where you can take certain parts of operating a vessel, optimization across fleets and so on, and move that to a centralized location. That makes it so much easier to get access to the right competency, the right people, and make them very efficient in serving a large fleet rather than sort of just being dedicated to one single vessel. So we believe it's a lot of stuff that is going to happen in this space in the coming years, even if we really don't expect the huge ocean-going vessels to be autonomous anytime soon. But at the same time, when we talk about this, right, we not only talk about getting information from the vessels, but we talk about the full, say, digital ecosystem that involves some things in the cloud, some things on the vessels, and some things in people's offices or phones. Then clearly cybersecurity is a big thing. And I think we cannot stress enough how important it is to take cybersecurity seriously. So one thing is that we need to build systems that are resilient, that are built with sort of security in mind. But at the same time, it's people, it's organization, it's processes, right? It's so many aspects of building a good security culture and building resilient organizations that I think it is just so important to have in mind. And we have seen some bad cases, right? Both with ransomware and other kinds of attacks. So it's certainly something to look into. We work closely with the KPMG on this topic, which are, at least in our views, some of the best in the market on this topic. Furthermore, artificial intelligence, machine learning certainly is a topic in the maritime as in other places. I worked with this quite extensively myself, and I think it's so important, right, to sort of get beyond the hype and look at what practical problems can you actually solve through analyzing data. And there are at least some examples that we look at and we think are exciting. On the left, like we're doing this condition-based maintenance, condition monitoring kind of stuff. To some extent, traditional things, right? It's been around for a long time, but advances in technology has made this kind of approach accessible for so many more components, and it's a lot easier today to build it into complete systems. So equipment monitoring and machine learning for us is a very intriguing area. Other places we see it is say location analytics, combining voyages, sort of transport data together with AIS data, for example. It's a lot of interesting insights that can be gathered, both to sort of increase your ability to trade and ways to really make the flow and the traffic becoming more efficient. Finally, collision avoidance. I was into this situational awareness things. So that the ability to sense and to see what happens around the vessel. It's certainly an interesting area that I believe we'll see even more developments in over the next few years. Yeah, so that was really what I wanted to talk to you about today. We see the maritime industry. It's a super interesting place to be. It's a big part of our current economy. It's what makes the world sort of blood flow in the economy today, and it's an area where digital solutions can really be a game changer over the next coming years. So, in order for the maritime industry to do its part of meeting our sustainability goals, we believe digitalization is just key. It's so many things to look into. So it's many ways to get involved. Singapore, great hub for this. Other places around the world as well, where you can really get in deep into these topics and create very meaningful value for the world. So thank you for your time. I hope this gave you some interesting thoughts, and hope you look forward to the rest of the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Anders. Truly insightful trends analysis from your part.